Ricky Hatton, the WBU World Light Welterweight Champion, too many words there, will defend his title against Joe Hutchinson from Indianapolis. We sent the Mirror's chief sports writer, Oliver Holt, to meet him.
This is Hyde, outskirts of Manchester. It's a cold, hard place on the edge of the moors. If you've heard of it, it's probably because Ian Brady and Myra Hindley lived in a house back there. Or maybe because Harold Shipman lived out his killing spree here. Now at last though, local people have got a hero they can shout about. He's Britain's best young fighter, a fighter with real style and charisma. His name's Ricky Hatton. Hyde, I suppose, is most notorious for being the home of Harold Shipman, but were you touched by that at all?
Not from a personal point of view, obviously, but these people and families around the area that you do know that had, suffered at the hands of, Dr. Shipman.
Is it a rough area?
It's certainly not Beverly Hills. These people I know who I was, when I was growing up, went doing drugs and robbing and stealing, and I just took the other road, really. I went into doing something I love, boxing. That was keeping me healthy, keeping me fit. It was giving me an interest.
Have you ever been scared going into a ring?
No, never one bit. I never underestimate an opponent, but in the other sense, I don't believe I can be beaten. So obviously, I feel a huge amount of pressure and nervous, because of wanting to do well.
Lennox Lewis is the type of guy who sees boxing as a kind of pugilistic chess match, and is always talking about that. Where would you class yourself?
From a style point of view, wherever Lennox Lewis is on the scale, I think I'm at the opposite end of the scale, really. But sometimes I just can't help myself. I love to have a tear up sometimes, and sometimes it's got me in trouble in fights. But I think that's why I pull in the crowds that I do.
Oh, he's ruthless with me on that body belt. If he sees me and he gets me and I'm winded a touch and that, he'll come in and try and finish me off. He's desperate to put me down one day, but he'll never do it.
I saw your title referred to somewhere, your WBU title referred to as a Mickey Mouse title recently. What's your response to that?
Well, there's that many titles out nowadays, but I think people come to watch the fighters, not the, not the champions or which belt it is.
When I was growing up, there's a lot of boxing on BBC and ITV. You're not as much of a household name as you would have been maybe if you'd been fighting 10 years ago. Does that bother you at all?
A little bit, obviously. I mean, probably Sky doesn't have the viewers, but Sky does a fantastic job on boxing. I think their coverage and the fights and shows that they put on is absolutely second to none. But it's good to see terrestrial television, starting to get back into it. They've started back in a small way, and hopefully it'll just progress bigger and bigger, and that can only be good for boxing, and who knows, maybe me down the line.
Rio Ferdinand might be carrying your belt into the ring or something on Saturday. Is there any truth in that?
Yeah, that's very true. We went to a charity benefit for the youth of Manchester. People could bid for it, and all the money would go to the charity, and Rio bid £6,500 for it. Obviously we have the banter about City and United, and I'm a big City fan. I mean, I have my box at Main Road. I come out to Blue Moon, a box in the colours. And
what are you like as a supporter? I remember you said you were banned from going to the game on the day of your fight because you tend to get a bit excited.
Yeah, absolute lunatic. Can't sit still in my seat. A couple of times I've bought. City have been at home the day of my fight, and my trainer and my father just said, listen, there's no way you're going to the match today. Boxing's about keeping your composure as well. It's not just about going in there and knocking 10 bells out your opponent. It's more like a chess game, as you said before. You've got to outthink your opponent and then out-punish him, so you've got to be cool as well, so it's probably best to give the football a miss.
It's interesting actually there, you mentioned Harold Shipman, isn't it, in the boxing, because apparently Harold Shipman was a fair old boxer in his time. He had a real lethal jab.
I knew that was coming. That was terrible.
Actually, I didn't see that at all. So well done, Victoria.
Yeah, so going back to Ricky Hatton, I mean, he's a top-class boxer, but we won't know how good he is until he fights someone decent. I mean, basically he's fighting stiffs, isn't he? Until he fights someone like Junior Witter, Costa-Zoo. I mean, in his last fight he fought Steve Smith, and poor old Steve, you remember that fight in controversial when Steve Smith took so many punches, he thought he was surrounded. I mean, it was a ridiculous fight.
I think that's the thing you say. I mean, everything about him looks good. He's got a lot of snap to his punches, and he builds a kind of percussive rhythm, but he's in with people who allow him to do that. They allow him to push them back, and it's going to come a point where he's going to get in the ring with someone who won't let him do that. And the thing, then it just comes down to something more primal than skill boxing. Kevin Rooney, the great fight trainer, said that to be a true champion in boxing, you have to be prepared to go into a dark place, and not many people want to go there.
Yeah.
And we don't know yet if Ricky Hatton is a man who will go into that dark place. We've got to find that out.
So is that undermining the credibility of individual fighters or the whole of the sport?
I think that's just something that happens. I mean, you know, fighters are built up, aren't they? You know, people build up a good record because then they can do it. You know, then Frank Warren, people like that can do a deal with other. You know, they don't want to risk him now against somebody like say Vivian Harris. You know, sort of saying.
Well, anyway, Pat Nevin just leaned across to me and said, "Look, you can tell that Ricky Hatton's soft." I said, "How?" He said, "Look, he's shaved his eyebrows."
Not that picture, the last one we've seen. Now, what you were saying there about the build-up, you're absolutely right about it. It's education. I mean, I know that a lot of them are soft, a lot of them are soft targets for quite a long time, but you have to educate the boxers. They're learning it like any other sport. You have to learn it. If you put him in with the top man, he'll get dumped because he hasn't learned his trade. So you have to learn his trade, but on the way up, there's a lot of...
But there's just a feeling that Frank Warren, his promoter, is giving him stiffs because he cuts very easily, does Hatton, and he's just worrying. I think he's milking as much money as he can from him, you know, until he steps up against him.
The thing is, he looks like, you know, as you say, he cuts easy. He looks to be that great sort of tradition of British boxers who bled very easily. Henry Cooper, Pat Cowdell, John H. Tracy, you know, can't go on and on with them, you know.
Yeah. Look, it's a non-event, the betting for it, this fight, and Joe Calzaghe's on the same bill in Newcastle. Hatton won to 33, and the interesting one is this: will he fight Costa Tszyu and beat him before the end of next year, 7-1? I don't think that will happen, actually. Also, Joe Calzaghe, as I mentioned, against a fella called Tucker Pudwill. I mean, you know, great name. Actually, Pudwill might be well to bet there at 12-1 because it is, of course, the season of Pudwill. But there's another fight going on tonight in Atlantic
Are you in
City.
Panto this year?
Chris Bird against Evander Holyfield. I should mention Chris Bird against Evander Holyfield. That will be a great fight, heavyweight fight. Holyfield coming back into the game, so it'll be interesting to see how that one goes. But they're non-events, really.
Pat, your dad was a boxer.
Yeah,
What, did you not fancy it?
No, I actually taught me quite a bit. I was young as I was growing up, and then one day I was about 12 or 13. I said, "I'm ready for you now, Dad." And he said, "No." And I said, "No, I'm ready for you." So I never seen it, and I woke up about 2 minutes later. And at that point in time, in my nose, I decided, no, it's not for me.
Yeah.
And it shows you the difference between people who do something and people who are just amateurs who just fancy a go at it. You just don't
What,
see
like
it.
Audley Harrison, you mean?
Are you a boxing fan, Mike?
Not really, but I just do sometimes, and I take Pat's point about that you have to build up to things, but I always just find it slightly frustrating where a lot of these fights end up in 1 round, 2 rounds, and I feel sorry for the people who paid to watch ticket money sort of thing.
But, fundamentally not sport, is it? I mean, sport we always talk about as being a competition between two viable operations, and boxing seems to have lost that completely.
Well, it's a sort of strange thing. It's lost it with certain fighters from certain countries, but I mean, those Mexican guys who come, they fight everybody. Because that's the only way they can get a title shot is by fighting good people. But you know, because of British TV money, they can kind of manipulate it, can't they, to get them into they get them title shots that if they were Mexican, Colombian, they wouldn't get.
I was talking of pantomime. I mean, to me, boxing now is a pantomime. Until we get somebody like Costa Tszyu fighting our guy, you won't know whether you're seeing sport, and at the moment we're not.
Yeah. Okay.